love it because you know its emotional and spiritual benefits, and you're compelled to declare joy to the world. Or maybe you hate it because you notice its little imperfections that lead to dire consequences, making it appear like a poisonous evil. Or maybe you just don't care and you grab the popcorn and you see an internet fight between the two former groups. No matter what your opinion on religion is, however, it is an indisputable fact that is everywhere around us. It is in histories and cultures and governments and the everyday lives of ordinary people around the world. For those skeptics out there, let's take a look at a few examples. What do you say when you see this? Bless you, that's right. We've been taught our whole lives to say bless you as a common courtesy when people sneeze. We've just grown up with it. Not surprisingly, this phrase has religious origins. In the 6th century AD, there was a bubonic plague epidemic in Europe. Sneezing was seen as a sign of the infection. It meant you were sick. In hopes to eradicate the disease, Pope Gregory the Great had people start saying, God bless you, when they saw people sneeze, in hopes that God would bless the poor soul with good health. You can also thank religion for the individualistic mindset we're also fond of, especially coffee. The age between 900 BC and 200 BC is known as the Axial Age. And it is a time in human history when humans change how we perceive ourselves. Before the Axial Age, we all saw each other as simply a part of a community, simply a part of a whole. During the Axial Age, however, we began to question what it means to be an individual, began to question our existence. There are many religions that came about of this era that reflect this way of thinking, like Taoism, Buddhism, Confucianism, even Greek philosophy, believe it or not. This shift in our way of thinking has changed our world in unimaginable ways and has affected us to this day. You can also find a lot of religion playing a big part in American pop culture. Like, for example, there's been a giant religion movement lately in Hollywood with movies like Son of God, Exodus, Noah, Heaven is for Real, God is Not Dead, etc. Also, take a look at these pieces of beauty. Alright, so on the right you got the originals, Last Supper by Da Vinci, and you got Creation of Adam by Michelangelo, and then you have this internet glory. So you got Looney Tunes Last Supper, and you got a Kermit the Frog here as Adam, with the Muppets and the Sesame Street there. If you look hard enough, you can find hundreds of these. That's how widely known this is. I'm pretty sure you guys have at least seen these paintings a lot. Religion also plays a giant part in governments around the world. A familiar example being the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. The framers found religion important enough to address it in the Constitution by allowing freedom of religion and at the same time separation of church and state, which is important. India has laws forbidding the killing of cows because they're seen as sacred in the Hindu religion. If you look hard enough, religion has played a big part in has touched governments all around the world in some way. But I hope by now I've convinced you that religion is undeniably everywhere. Now you may be asking yourselves, oh God, what's your point? Okay, we get that religion is everywhere, but why are you telling us this? Good question, thank you for asking. So, the reason I say this is because America is religiously illiterate. Now, what's religious illiteracy, you might ask? Again, good question. I like you guys. Religious illiteracy is the inability to know some of the basic facts about some of the world religions. And it's the inability to learn about new religions. Now, how do I know America's religiously illiterate? There was a survey done recently by the Pew Research Center that tests average Americans from various religious demographics, including atheists. Yes, they're a religion too. And they're given a basic religious literacy test, and the results were staggering. Across the board, the average is 16 out of 32. In a test that asks basic questions such as who led the Jews out of Egypt, if the government can interfere or establish religion, or if the Quran is the Islamic holy book, the average was 50%. That ain't good. Now, you may be asking yourself, okay, how is this a problem exactly? What's the big deal? If you think about it, religious illiteracy leads to an inability to understand others who are different from you. Don't believe me? Let me hear it and I'll convince you. There's a little thing called habitus. Habitus is the product of your environment growing up. and is the habits of the product of your environment growing up, and is the embodiment of your mindset, which in turn affects your general assumptions, your general behavior, and what you deem normal. So, since I proved to you that religion is everywhere, I hope I've done that effectively. Religion is all part of our habits. It's all in here. But to take an extreme example, say if someone were to grow up in an extremely Christian family, it seems like Christianity is in every aspect of that person's life growing up. Chances are that environment is going to rub off on them. And the same as for the person in contrast. Say if someone were to grow up in an extremely atheist family, and they have a large intolerance for religion in general. I say religion because they're a religion too. But that would rub off on them until they become. These two people were to meet, they'd be complete opposites, coming upon disagreements and misunderstandings that ultimately lead to some kind of conflict. That is assuming that they are religiously illiterate, however. If they did know, however, that there were different ways of thinking than their own, and they had that pre-existing knowledge that, yes, there are other ways of thinking than your own. Not everybody is the same as you. Not everybody grew up the same as you do. Not everybody thinks the same as you do. Then they could get along in this situation. Religious literacy is also key to a well-rounded education. If you want to be successful in the global market, you have to understand the world first and be mindful of other perspectives and mindsets. Also, widespread religious literacy would also make the school environment a much more inclusive place. Because if you think about it, instead of religious minorities being excluded from a majority that can't understand them, people would be more mindful and respectful of them. Okay. Oh, and wait. Okay. Now, to help you understand what I'm saying, let me indulge you with a few examples. Say you got a friend over, and you're just having a good time. You're like playing video games, run outside, do whatever you do. You're good friends. You go at night and go tell each other good night. Hi, Billy. No, Ronan. And you wake up to the smell of bacon. Bacon, people. You run downstairs and behold your majesty bacon. Okay, so your friend comes down a few minutes later to see you stuffing your face. As a gracious host would do, you offer some bacon to your friend. But they say no, I can't. You get kind of little irritated, thinking that's kind of a slight. I mean, who would refuse the gift of bacon? But they say no, I can't. And when they see you're being a little pushy, then they say I have to go and leave. Things get awkward from there, and you're just not really good friends anymore because of that incident. Because you're obsessed with bacon. But I hope all of us are religiously literate enough to know about the kosher principle of about the Jewish principle of kosher foods and how pork is a big no-no. So if the lesser you were to know this little tidbit of information, you'd most likely be more mindful and respectful of that person's religion and think, okay, I won't be so pushy about this glorious bacon. Okay, but that example is a little basic, so let's do something a little less so. Say you're visiting Japan and you go to a Shinto temple shrine at night. You know, you're sightseeing, you're admiring the handicraft of the arches and whatever, and suddenly like a wave of hundreds of drunken Japanese dudes just all runs at you at once. And you can't process what's going on, but what you can process is madness. There's fires everywhere, there's oh, crap. There's fires everywhere, everybody's got torches, they're beating each other senseless, they're drinking sake like there's no tomorrow. In other words, it's absolute chaos, okay? So you run for the hills for your life, and after a few minutes of cool down, you notice them gathering all into one giant clump of sweaty, drunken madness at the back of the temple door. And then the temple doors open, and everybody just runs out at once. And they're running each other over, still being, what's with the punching? Anyway, needless to say, you take the next flight home, you swear, I'm never going to visit Japan again. They seem crazy enough without that display of madness, right? Well, a more religiously literate person would see this ceremony as the Shinto ceremony of fire. The purpose of the ceremony is to recreate the chaos they believed existed before the universe was created, and the universe, and they recreate chaos in order so the universe, the world would be reborn, purified. It's actually a really beautiful ceremony if you think about it. It's full of purging and fencing, and in their minds, purification. If you were to know this, you'd most likely have a religious experience yourself instead of viewing these people as chaotic and barbaric. Now, I hope I've shown you that religious illiteracy is at least somewhat a problem. And you can probably see by now how it can lead to some exclusion and some misunderstanding and whatnot. That's why I propose a community religious education center. In this community religious education center, you learn some basic lessons about the world of religion, some lessons about religions from big ones like Christianity, the lesser known ones like Baha'i and indigenous and tribal religions. With each lesson, you enrich your mind and you help to eradicate ignorance. With each person that is enlightened, we begin to make the world a more inclusive place. Okay, sure, I know that religious literacy is not the key to everything. I know that there are many factors that lead to exclusion and ignorance and whatnot. That doesn't mean that fixing religious literacy will not be a giant step forward. Thank you.